I saw one, it was a German tank that we were going in to take the city, and I remember coming into the city. People are trying, civilians trying to get out, we were trying to get in. And we came up to this one place, and there was a German tanker who was in a burnt black and in a crawling position, right in the middle, you know, like a statue. And that kind of hits you when you see things of that sort.
How old were you at that time?
I would have been 19, going on 20 probably, 19 or 20, around there. So anyhow, then we continued on to the Rhine, and then at the Rhine we went across, and I was with different outfits along the way. I mentioned one thing to your mother one time about how hardened you get in the war, in combat. And I remember going into this one small town, and of course we had lost people along the way, and this German man came out of his house, locked his houses, walking down the street trying to get out. And this GI came up and he said, give me the key, give me the key. The German said, 999. He was going to shoot him. And I said, hold it. I said, when he goes down the street, just go kick the door in. You know, you don't have any trouble getting in his house. But he was so up because he had lost friends, and there are a lot of things that happen like that where people, you lose a little bit of your civility, but then in times it comes back to you too to say, yeah, we are human beings and we don't want to just carelessly take lives if we don't have to. But we went on through. I was forward observer for about, from the time we went across the Ruhr until the end of the war, I was with the infantry or the forward people up in front all the time. And we, as I mentioned, we got to the Rhine. We went across the Rhine in boats there, but at that time the opposition had dropped down, so it wasn't nearly as bad as going across the Ruhr. So we continued on until one day they told us, we think the war is over. We're not sure, but we think it's over. And that would have been close to my birthday, in April. I think I turned 21 in April. That's why when my birthday came up, I kind of remember that. As a matter of fact, I just celebrated the 60th anniversary of my 21st birthday when that was over there. And then when we went across the Ruhr, the captain came over after it was over and he said, well, we're going to get a Bronze Star for our group. And we flipped a coin and I won the coin for the Bronze Star. And I know there's some question as to whether I ever got it or didn't get it, but I was supposed to have gotten it anyhow. And then when a lot of the things on the different battles, I had got about 7 or 8 different theater battles and battle stars on the ribbons and so forth. I was fortunate. One I didn't want was Purple Heart. I didn't get that one.
That's good.
But I did get frozen hands and frostbitten hands and feet during the balls. And everybody always said, you ought to turn, you should have gotten disability. I said, well, everybody that was there must have gotten them because it sure as heck was cold enough. But we went through it, and we lost some good friends along the way, particularly Jimmy Weary, who was, I won't show the picture now because you'll have to look at
You can show me the picture in a minute.
But there's a picture when we were we were out of basic training because I had made corporal by that time. And there was a place in a little town outside of the camp. Just never forget it. What is it? No, what's the name of that town? Can't remember it offhand. But yeah, the town pump was the place you'd go in. They didn't sell liquor, you could buy beer in there. So there's a picture of a bunch of us sitting around drinking beer. We look like a bunch of kids there.
Bunch of kids.
Yeah. But anyhow, I've been rambling on. You probably have.
I wanted you to tell me about the sandwich that you absconded with from that German soldier.
Sandwich?
Didn't you have lunch on it?
No, I sat on him. Didn't take his lunch.
Oh, I thought you got his lunch.
No. No, they only had hard black bread. I didn't want that in.
Okay. How did you stay in touch with your family while you were over there?
Well, we wrote sometimes. I was not a great one for writing letters, but we got mail once in a while. Matter of fact, the night before I went over the Aurora, all my mail caught up with me at one time, and so I had all these letters from home just the night before we were going across the Aurora. So going across the Aurora was probably kind of a highlight for me because it was important. And I'm with the field artillery, so that most of the people in our outfit are a couple of miles behind. So there's only a few of us that are actually up with the infantry all the time. And of course, most people know what a forward observer does, but what we do is we radio back and direct fire on different positions or different locations up front. One of the hardest things for a forward observer is if the first line is moving too fast and you call for artillery, and sometimes you're shooting your own people at times. Friendly fire, you've heard of that. But most of me understand those things can happen. I know one of the things that Hughes and I had, because we were the forward observer, you had the first line of infantry would go, and we would be with them. Then there'd be a second. But when we had to stop and they would tell us we had to call back and call for fire, we'd be in between the two. So we were catching the artillery that was coming in. And as one time, we had the radio up and we're calling back, and we hear this thing coming. Knew it was an 88. That was the cruelest weapon the Germans had, was this 88. It's an artillery piece, like a rifle though. But anyhow, we hear it coming, and there's a little hole, probably as big as that. We're both trying to get into this hole. And that sucker landed, I'd say, 40 feet from us. It was a dud. We heard it, we saw it, and it didn't explode.
What does an 88 do?
It blows up. It's artillery.
Okay.
And when it lands, it's supposed to explode, and this one, fortunately for us, didn't explode. We had a number of things. You have a lot of things, close call. Our soldiers, I remember one time we were going across a minefield, and there's one guy out there that had been out, one of our guys out there, and had got hit on his leg with one. And he's sitting there, and he's directing other guys, go that way, so that you get around the minefield. Wasn't thinking about himself, he was thinking about his buddies, trying to get him around there. And most of the time, my outfit, all I knew were behind me, except for Hughes and Captain Mowry. So these are all new people that we were meeting all the time, but we blended in well with them. And I remember the one fellow said to me, before we had to go across a large plain to take this city. That's where this fellow got his leg hit. And I was sitting there, and one of the infantrymen says, "Is there anybody that doesn't have an infantryman badge here?" And I said, "No, I don't have one." He says, "Well, you sure as hell ought to have one if you're here." So that was kind of good. But the American GIs were very resilient, and I think did a wonderful job over there.
Do you have any particularly humorous stories that you remember?
Well, I have one in particular that good friend of mine, he's Sal Lettieri, God rest his soul, he's passed away now. This is an occupation. And your mother listening? This is an occupation. And
we're alone, it's just you and I.
We had gone out and we had picked up a couple of girls, and we had an NCO's club and we had booze and so forth. Anyhow, we were pretty well along. So we got back to the barracks, and checking in with the sergeant, and well, there's certain procedures they do for you. But anyhow, Sal gets sick. So we go into the bathroom, and it's one of these, over there they had these overhead pull bathtub. So Sal is throwing up in the bathtub, and I heard him say, "Flush the toilet." So I flushed the toilet. And he said, "Billy," I said, Don't flush the toilet. My front teeth are gone.
And he was going home the next
And
day?
well, no, we were going home shortly, but we stayed in touch for a while. He said they managed to replace them before he had to go home, but don't flush. I said, all I heard you say was flush it, Sal. And he was crying. Oh, he was just sad. Well, we were both crying, you know, we were a little crocked, you might say.
Maybe.
But there are a lot of things through the war, you know, after the war, a lot of strange little happenings, because one thing you didn't want to do is, number one, be the last guy killed in the war, or get in trouble after, you know, when you're waiting to go home.
Tell me about the day that you left when you knew you were going home.
Oh, that was a long deal. After the war was over, we were on our way back to go to catch a ship to come back to the States to train to go over to Japan. And we're on these 40 and 8 cars, you know, where they used to put horses and men on, from World War I. And we were told the war had ended in Japan. So instead of us catching a ship, we got shipped over to England. And everybody has so many points before you go home. And we were stuck in England for 3 or 4 months before we came home.
Getting your points?
You had to have enough points. And then they kind of bypassed us and they said, well, we're only doing it by section. So, you know, we just got to go to London a lot and sold all the war souvenirs that we got. We sold to the German, or we know they had some Italian POWs. They seem to have money there. We sold things to them, get money so we could go to London and party around a little bit.
How did you get home?
Well, when we finally got the word that we were going to come home, we went to Southampton. And it was in January, late January. And we looked up, and during the war, they built these Kaiser ships that were intended for bringing, not soldiers, these were supposed to be bringing across ammunition and supplies and so forth. But they rigged this up in double and triple bunks for us to come home. So they told us, well, we're going to take the southern route so it won't be so bad. Well, we were a day out of Southampton and the ship broke down. So they had to come in and haul us all the way back to Southampton again. And we waited another day or two, and then we stayed in the boat all the time and let us off the boat while they were fixing it. So then they decided, well, because we lost several days, they were going across the Atlantic. So we went across the North Atlantic, and I swear there were waves 50 feet high in this little boat going through it. And it was myself and Nick Shaheen and one other fellow, I forget who. We made a pact. We were going to make our meals. We were going to spend most of our time roped in up on top, out inside, because I had fellows that got in bed and never got out of the bed until we got to New York. It was just so bad, so sick. But that was scary.
How long did it take to cross?
God, it seemed like about 7 months, but I imagine it was about a week. I would think about a week. Most of it was bad weather.
When you got home, what did you do then?
You mean when we landed in New York?
Okay.
Well, we landed in New York, and we got the fast shuttle because we were coming home late. This was February of '46, and so we were coming home late. So there weren't any big bands out there waiting to welcome us home. So we got to New York, and they put us on. Within a day, we were on trains, and we ended up in camp near Indianapolis. And so they said, well, okay, we get to Indianapolis, we get in the camp, we'll be able to sit down and have a couple of beers for a day or two again. In 2 days, they got us out. 2 days, they said, well, you're done, here's your barracks bag, here's a couple $100, go home, find your way home. So everybody's running out trying to find buses. And finally, I know we got a bus that got us back to Detroit so we could get home. I think Nick Shaheen again, and he and I were about the two that went in together, stayed pretty much all the way through, because after the war, after part of occupation, because we were a small outfit, they began breaking us up and sending some here and some in, their divisions all stayed together. But I ended up going with, I did have a nice side trip though, as a result of that. I was stationed with some engineers, and they had connection with air base over outside of in Ireland, outside of Belfast. And one of the guys had gone over with their mail, and he hadn't come back. So they said they're looking for somebody to go over, and I said, yeah, I'm Irish descent, I'd like to go over. So it's quite complicated. Trains here and get to England, London, and you got to switch to another one. Then went up to Scotland and caught a barge over. So I went over, and the guy picked me up, took me out the airport. Boy, they had it great. I found the guy who was over there. He said, well, we're going into town, so we went into Belfast, and we had fresh milk and chicken, and I didn't go back either. But a few days later, they came over and said, well, we're going home now. So we all packed up and went back to make our trip to go home. But I had a wonderful few days in Ireland. It was quite an experience.
Why didn't he come back? Just because it was
so
good?
nice.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
You know, one of the guys that was at the base where I left, not in Ireland, but back where I came from, his name was Coogan. And if you go way back in the movies, Jackie Coogan was quite a child star.
I remember that name, Little Jackie Coogan.
Yeah, this is his brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was his brother. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, Jackie Coogan, I don't know if he was, I think he was a glider pilot over in Asia. I think he was.
So once you got back to Detroit and you got back home, then what did you do? Did you marry? Did you go to school?
Oh, no.
Or?
Didn't marry. Well, a good friend of mine, Roy Stigler, and Jack Fredericks, my two best friends. What we started doing was going downtown to see if we could find some clothes. Now, the clothes we had left behind really didn't fit us too well. When I left home, I was probably 5'9", 135 pounds. And I